third of page Dalet, and the line begins with the word Ba'olam. Okay, we agree that that's what we're up to? Huh? Yeah. I'm sorry, Ba'olam, okay, right? Okay, that's what we start. Okay. So I'm not going to repeat what you said. I just want to ask a simple question. You know, we spent an enormous amount of time and effort to explain how a mashal gashmi can point to an Indian, to a godly Indian, to an Indian Ruchni. Surely, this is not something that we expect that we'll be able to really grasp fully the first time, at least even the first time, and to be able to develop and delve into it. I'm not expecting that. I just want to know that we realize what we're talking about, that we can relate to the principles that we're talking about. What is Gashmi? What is Eliki? How are they diametrically opposed? How are they different? And how does Gashmi ultimately, by exposing the emotional, actually shows a yin eliki? And last but not least, to realize that the reason that the Gashmi is actually points for Yin Eliki is because the Gashmi actually comes from Elokus. It is not just a coincidence. I found a way to expose something. That is the reality. Except this is the reality at a very Gashmic level where you don't see it readily. But if you apply your sensitivity, your seichel, your intelligence, you see this in it. At least you can recognize there is more to it than the Gashmi. Just want to know that we follow through on this principle. You understand, right? We have used many illustrations. One very simple one is the scene of an object falling downwards. So we say it falls down. Gashmi is per se, it's not falling down. It's falling because it's being pulled down. So it's Gashmi. Then we say, no, but it's going down. And that is actually representative of the whole principle of go up and down Beruchnis. Beruchnis also there is down, that which is more tangible, more physical, like the emotions versus the intellect. The intellect is Ruchni relative to the emotions. And as we point out all the time, yesterday towards the end, I mentioned it also as it fit into our discussion. The human being stands on 2 feet. That's being up. That's not being down. The animal is supported by the down, by the earth. The human being is not supported by the earth. That's being up. Because he actually floats upwards. Because Ruach Ha'odam is rising upwards. So, if we get the points as we go through, surely in Mitzvah Shem, as you learn more and you review more and so forth, it will be more effective, it will be more significant. But I want to know that we get the point so that we can progress further and get the greater significance as we go on. Okay. So we are on this line that begins with word bo'olam. And it's just above a third from the bottom of the page, down. And the line begins with word bo'olam. So far, we were talking about the seichel of the nefesh ha'elokis as it influences the seichel of the nefesh ha'bahamis. Now we're going further. Mukmoi keinhu, the similar in relationship is also to be found behisoirus hamidas. When you talk about the arousal of midas, and the midas becoming his spoils. Spoils means being aroused and being excited. Before we go there, I want to just give a little bit of an explanation, a little bit of an insight as to the clear distinction between seichel and midas. Okay? Please don't let me lose you. If you don't understand something, stop me. We use this mashal all the time, the difference between sight, which is allegorical to seichel. Sight begashmis is what seichel is beruchnis. Very similar, although of course seichel is a different category, but they have similarities in this, and we'll point out what the similarities are. And then there is midos versus touch, which are the other chushim, touch, smell, or even hearing. What?
You said seichel meaning from the godly soul in comparison with the...
No, the koyach has seichel.
Yeah.
Just the experience of seichel versus seichel and midas. Seichel and midas are different qualities, and their difference can be illustrated by the difference of the sight versus touch, or any other faculty.
Sight versus any other one of the senses.
Any other of the chushim. And what is the principal difference that we mentioned many times? Sight is the only one of the five chushim that allows you to recognize and to relate to something, to see something, without being in contact with it, without being affected by it. Now, you see it because it's there, not because it affects you. Touch, why do you feel what you touch? Because it affects you. You're actually impressed by it.
That's seichel?
Which one?
The one that you get affected by?
No.
That's re'iyah?
Well, re'iyah is like seichel.
But you're saying the one that you don't get affected is re'iyah, right?
Right.
And the one that where you do get affected is seichel?
No, you missed my point. Seichel and midas are ruchnische koiches. Begashmius, these same koiches are also present on the gashmische level, and that's re'iyah and touch. Re'iyah is like seichel; it's comparable to seichel, and touch is and all other chushim are comparable to midas. And what is the comparison? And what are the difference between sight and all other chushim? And he said there's a primary difference, and the difference in general is that every other chush you become aware of that which you're aware of by being in personal contact with it.
Even hearing?
Even hearing also, because the sound hits your ear, and that's how you hear.
Smell also, hit your nose.
I'm sorry?
Smell also hits your nose.
Smell hits your nose.
And sight, you wouldn't say the light hits your eye?
That's correct. The sight, the light hits your eye, but what you're seeing is not light. What you're seeing is the object.
Oh, the actual thing, the actual thing is not affecting your body.
I'm sorry?
It's like the actual thing is not affecting your
That's
body.
right. And you know it. You know it clearly. The principle of sight is that you know the truth of it. How do you say it's true? Because it's not because you're affected by it. You know it because it's there. Something that affects you. You touch something. So you're saying, oh, it's there. How do you know it's there? Maybe you feel cold, so you think it's there. Or you feel hard, you know what I'm saying? You're affected by it. It's all because of your reaction. Whereas sight is not to do with your reaction. You see this object.
As it is.
Huh?
You see it as it is.
As it is. Because it is.
not-
Because it's true. Not because of how it affects you. In other words, begashmius, sight, relates you to the truth of the object, to the fact that something truly exists. Every other chush does not relate to the truth, it relates you to how it affects you, how you are reacting to it. You understand? Huh? You didn't? Okay. I'm going to say it one more time, 10 more times, but we have to understand it. Sight versus touch. When you come into this room, you see this table. Before, the table can be 100 feet away from you. You see it. You have any doubt that it's a table there?
No, you see it.
You see it. You're 100% sure that there's a table there. Even though you never touched it, you never felt it. But you're 100% sure it's there. Touch, you do not know anything. It's there until you touch it. With touch.
Okay, it's not much of just seeing it. Seeing it doesn't do anything.
No, that's not the point. I hear what you're saying. Good. It's not the point. You are interpreting what I'm saying as, you're understanding it as touch is a more profound, a more real knowledge than sight. Because touch, you're actually affected by it, whereas sight, you only see it from afar. That's how you take it. But the truth is, there is an element in this. But the truth is that sight has a much deeper effect on the person than touch. How do we know that? How do we know that?
If you see something, you believe it. When you touch something, you not.
You know that simply from halach, that a person who doesn't have sight doesn't have a yetzer hara. That's what it says. Yetzer hara doesn't have, somebody who is sightless does not have a yetzer hara. Why not? He can touch it, he can taste it. Why not? The reason is that the yetzer hara is really a fool that he has his yetzer hara, but he is not enticed. You know what enticed means? He's not aroused by something that's not real, by an imaginary thing. Sight gives you a sense that the world is real. This is why the yetzer hara responds to it. It wants something real. Shabbos, we put candles on the table. You know the mitzvah of lighting candles. Why would the Chacham Mesaken this mitzvah right on Shabbos?
Because when you see the food, you have onion.
You should see the food that you eat. What you need to see, you taste it.
Shabbos candles?
Yeah. There should be a light at the table. You should be able to see the food. That was the original Takana. And why you need to see the food? In order to enjoy it. Because Shabbos you have to enjoy your food. Timing. Why can't you enjoy it? You're eating it, you're tasting it. So you need to see it to enjoy it. What's the answer? Yes, indeed. If you don't see what you eat, you don't have time from it. You can taste it. It has a sour taste, a sweet taste, whatever it is. But oineg is when you actually see what you're eating. By looking at the food without eating it, oineg. But if you eat, seeing it, that's when you have oineg.
Why? Because like seeing it makes it something real.
Makes it real, exactly. See, makes it come real. You with me so far?
Yes, but what's the difference in touching it?
Okay, what's the difference in touching it? So we're saying touching does not give you a sense that this is real. What does it mean? You're touching it. What is, we'll now have to go and actually define the word real. What's the difference between real and imaginary?
One thing is that you think of something, you wish it would be. One thing, nothing is actually there.
Right. But you're imagining it. You're seeing it in your mind.
It's different than when you actually see it.
A little more verbiage. When it's if you're imagining it, you are creating it. When it's real, it's being created for you. You're not creating it. It's real, means it's actually there without your any effect.
So when you touch something, so you have to make sure that it's real. So you're trying to make it that it's real. So you don't believe it on your own.
No. When you touch something, it's real, but you find out that it's real by how it affects you. So it's still by your reaction to it. Whereas in sight, there's no reaction on your part. You see it, and it's real, just the reality itself. In sight, you see only the reality. In fact, what is being made, not how it affects you at all.
Why is something when it affects you not considered real? Saying, so when you touch it, so you're realizing how it affects you. So why isn't that considered real?
I explained that the principle of reality is that this is something which is there, not because you wish it there, because you feel it, but because it's there in itself.
Yeah, but
That's a
why
piece
can't you
of-
say that. Feel it. Fine, so you're just feeling it in order to just... No, but you know it's there, but you just don't feel it. I'm not understanding something. Fine, so you know it's there, you realize that...
No, I hear, okay, we'll go a step further. Fine. The explanation to that is that all the koiches, but I'd like you to follow this, all the koiches, sight, touch, taste, even seichel and midas, all the koiches are actually koiches that come from a nefesh, from the neshama. We understand that. The koiches, let's say, this table is standing because it has wooden legs that hold it up. The wooden legs have nothing to do with the concept of the table, have nothing to do with the neshama of the table. It's just a piece of wood that holds up the table. The koiches in a person All the koiches, touch, smell, taste, sight, all of them, actually relate us back, and they're revelations, emanations from our neshama, from our nefesh, a living thing. What's the difference? What's the difference between you standing on your feet and the table standing on its legs? You standing on your feet, they're physical feet, also made, whatever it made a little different than table feet, but they're physical feet are holding you up. The table is standing on its feet, on its legs, or whatever it is. What is the difference?
One has a spirit.
Excuse me?
One has a spirit.
And one has a spirit in it. Is the spirit exclusively a foot spirit, or is it a human spirit?
It's a human spirit.
Do you understand the difference?
Here. Saying that foot spirit means I have no idea what foot spirit is, no idea what it's explain it.
No, you do have an idea. You don't know that you have an idea. That's what you're trying to reveal in your own mind. Remember, we spoke many, many times about a very interesting phenomenon that we all observe. And that is that a horse, a half hour after it's dropped, jumps around on its legs. And a human being takes a year and a half, 2 years until it stands up on its feet. What is going on? The horse is so much advanced, so to speak, than a human being. I mean, if you go to the scientists, say, listen, you say the human being is involved further than the horse. No, the horse is ahead of the human being. Half hour it's born, poof, he jumps around. What's a human being? Takes him a year and a half to imitate that which the horse is able to do a half hour later. What's the explanation?
Because by a person, it goes through a process in the brain. Everything goes through a process in the brain.
A human being walking is an intellectual experience. Is that something that makes sense to you guys? If it doesn't, I'll go back and explain. Because we explained that until a child stands up on its feet, it goes through such a tremendous process of development. His intellectual development. He doesn't stand up because he has feet like a horse. He stands up because he wants to stand up. Because he appreciates standing up. He doesn't want to crawl on his fours anymore. He wants to stand up. Why? Because that's his spirit. That's his intellect says, no, I want to stand up. So the feet are not just means of standing. But the horse stands because he has feet. The feet are doing their thing, has nothing to do with the intellect.
Isn't it the brain of the horse that's telling the feet to stand?
No.
No?
No. The feet stand because the feet stand. You never saw a horse being bored standing.
Well, it's not really possible.
What?
It's not really possible.
Why not? A human being stands up, it becomes bored, doesn't become bored, stands. All the time. Stands, there's no budging, nothing, stands. Not the table stands, the horse stands. Not much difference.
So by a horse that just stands because it has legs, that's it?
Yeah.
Nothing goes to the brain?
It's an instinctive thing. The brain, there is a chayas ha-nefesh, what's called the physical chayas that goes through the brain. But not the activity This is something which he is trained. It's an instinctive thing. This is how he was created. It's not the midas or milo, whatever it is, but nevertheless it's an instinctive thing. He doesn't have to think. In a half hour, the horse developed the idea that he have to stand on the feet. No way. No way.
So how does it have the power to move?
Excuse me?
So how does it have the power to just stand up?
The power he has because it's right in his muscles. And he has chayes nefesh, what's called the nefesh, that gives physical life.
Okay, so by the child has to the muscles all have to grow.
No. Child doesn't stand up in muscles. He stands up because he wants to stand up. Even when he falls down, he makes an effort to stand up. He wants to stand. Even when he's not able to stand, he's constantly climbing up to stand up. It's a completely different phenomenon, totally. Because this is a human being, and this is a horse. That's why you always point out, a human being is a unique creature. There's nothing like him. It's important for us to remember it from time to time. When our instincts are drawing us to become horses, can't make it not a horse. All right. So what is in fact the difference? A human being, everything that he does is rooted in his brain. Not only the koyach to do it, but the idea that it represents. The idea. A child stands, he knows that he is standing. It's not that he is standing by instinct. He knows that he is standing. And he falls down, he wants to get up again. Because he wants to stand up. I appreciate it. It's an intellectual concept. In other words, there is a human element, that's not a human element, human neshama element in everything that he does.
So you're saying, so in other words, so the difference between an animal and a horse would be like, one's into what he's doing, so he's thinking about it, so he's totally into it. But by an animal, he's not.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, basically. Well, it's quite a basic thing. It's not that he thinks this is a neshama thing. A human being has a completely different neshama than
And the
animal.
person just does things out of habit, so that's not, so that at that time, he's not, he'll be human, so to speak.
No, he can do things out of habit, but this habit originally was formed through a human process.
Now it's not.
What?
But now it's not.
Not?
Now it's not.
Now it is. It is duplicating what he has experienced then. The REBBE explains this whole phenomenon. How does a person speak without thinking of what he is saying? It's because he already invested his thought into it. And he is able to, but on the contrary, this shows that this whole union is not just he's thinking now and is acting now, but it's actually rooted in his nefesh. Even if he doesn't think about it, he already had developed and revealed that quality, and now he can function without thinking about it. One second. I'll tell you. Our pursuit here is not to understand exactly how it was by the human being. It is to distinguish and to understand the concept, the difference between the animal and the human being, so that we will get to understand what seichel is and midas is. That is our point here. So we explained that we can recognize it more clearly when we compare a human being to an animal. And we see that the human being, everything that he does is actually an emanation, a revelation of his self, of his neshama. It's not just a key functioning on its own. I once explained the principle of tznius. Right? Remember that? You wear clothing. And the clothing will cover our whole body, except for our head. Why? What's so shameful about our body? Every part of the body has things to do. The foot, hand, whatever it is, why we have to cover it? And what's the significance of covering it? This again points out the distinction between a human being and an animal. By an animal, all parts of his body, every part is of equal value. The head is on the same height as the tail. And they have equal, each thing functions on its own. The feet functions as feet. And the mouth has its job, the ears have their job, and the feet have their job. Everything has its own job, independent of each other. A human being is a totally different thing. Yes, he has all the limbs, all the parts that an animal has, but they are completely subservient to the brain. They all function on their own. They all act independently. This is why we cover them, to say they don't have a value but for being in service to the brain. If we uncover them, we are essentially making a statement that they have a value of their own. So can you imagine a person following the instinct of his foot or anything else? So that's not appropriate. That's why we cover everything. We say everything has a function, but where does the function originate? And under whose auspices is it doing it? Under the brain. So everything we cover up except for the brain. You want to see the human being? Want to see the whole human being? Here he is. Because everything comes from here. You understand? This is also illustrated in this concept. Everybody relates to it. Yeah, you want to cover everything. Why? Because it doesn't function independently. The animal, as I said, the horse dropped a half hour later, it jumps around. Because it realized, it went to school and realized they have to jump. Or because it's free jump. Okay. What is this ultimately tell us? Now we have to go to the next step. What this ultimately tells us is the following. The horse can act instinctively. I have feet, so I walk. Does it have to have a purpose? Does it have to have a function? No, I walk. A human being does not act on that level. I have feet, so I walk. I have a mouth, so I talk. That's not the way it works. A human being functions at a much higher level. I talk because it is correct to talk. I walk because it is correct to walk. In other words, he is oriented. If you don't understand some word, please tell me. Oriented? He relates to. He thinks in terms of a bigger truth, or a bigger reality, of meaning. He doesn't act because he feels like acting. He acts because it is correct in general to act. this general reality, this general value, at least at this level, is we call reality. Real. It's not a personal instinct. He realizes that there's a reality. And he has to function, act in this reality. When a human being sees the world, and lahavdil, the animal sees the world, they are not seeing the same thing. What's the difference? The difference is that the animal sees whatever it sees only from its own perspective. Like it sees whatever, if it sees grass, is it edible or is it not edible? It doesn't think in terms of beauty, in terms of whatever it is. It sees another animal. Is this animal dangerous? Is he going to attack me or going to attack him? It sees everything from its own perspective. A human being sees the world from a perspective, what's this world all about? What did God make? Not from his own perspective. What kind of reality is this? That's how a human being relates to the world. Do you understand that? Yeah? This is the meaning of the word reality. It is not my personal experience. It's not my personal effect, how I imagine it. What is really there? This is what we say, this is where a human being actually recognizes that the world is a godly creation, because it's real.
Is it possible that a person could confuse what's real with what other people imagine and what other people...
Anything can be confused. Everything is possible. Every possibility you can imagine is possible. This is why we have to learn and think and get instruction and kind of, we have to focus and see what do we really see, what do we really understand. Because it's possible for a human being to see the same world that the animal sees. Absolutely possible. As a matter of fact, the scientist does not admit to anything that we just now said. Does not admit to anything that we just now said.
What would the scientist say?
He says that a human being sees the physical world the same as the animal sees it.
Maybe he's an animal.
He is an animal. He's a monkey.
Does that mean that a scientist will deny all sense of human type of sensitivity, such as
Yep. He will say that it's all imaginary. He will say that you put on clothes because you're embarrassed. This is all folklore, tradition. It's not real. They got used to thinking that's what you're thinking. There's morality, there's right and wrong. Forget it. There's nothing real in that. This is the world around us. This is why it's imperative that we learn this, to understand what kind of confusion we are amidst. How we have to recognize our own path. You go to university and you listen to a professor, a scholar, really a professor who knows an enormous amount of information, a genius, And everything that he says is simple stupidity. Animal talk. And that make the more animal talk he is, the more genius he is, the bigger the professor he is. It's laughable. It's more than laughable. It's cryable. That's the fact. That's the fact of it. So, let's come back to what the topic at hand. So, coming back now, there is such a concept, what's called reality. And the concept of reality means something that is real not because I experience it, but because it's real. Well, the REBBE still made it. That exists only in the human mind. Only the human being knows of this thing. An animal does not have any access to this kind of a concept. This is why we say an animal don't have seichel, no possibility, no such thing. Because the whole principle of seichel is based on this nekuda, on this principle that we mentioned in the Rambam. To know that the first being that brings everything to existence. If everything evolved from Gashmis, there's no nothing, there's no reality. No seichel. The scientists, they deny that there's such thing as seichel. It's all experienced, it's all learned. Psychological effects. Do you understand? So we have to work very hard to get in touch with ourselves, get in touch with our seichel, and to recognize that when we say something, real, we know what we're talking about. Seichel, seichel d'Arjaban is godly concept. Ruchni is physical. This is all a seichel d'Kiyim. I'm sorry?
Still didn't really get it. I'm saying because, I don't know. This touching thing, it's not sort of like a real reality. When you touch it, I still didn't get it.
No, it's reality, but it's reality because it's similar reality as the animal experiences. Because you experience it, it's real. The concept of reality that is unique to the human being is in seichel. I explained, reality, by this definition, is that which is real in and of itself, not because it affects me. Touch? How do I know that the table is here?
Touching it, because you're being affected by it.
Because I feel it. I feel it.
So I see.
No. It's true. I see, but it's different. Because when I see, it doesn't affect me.
Yeah, it does.
How does it affect me? It's a distant.
No, it's in your brain now.
What?
The thing that you saw is now pictured in your brain.
Okay, but how did it get into my brain? Because my brain recognized that there is something real.
That shows that you're being affected by it.
How? No. That thing is a mile away from me. How can I be affected by it?
Your brain.
But it never came to me.
It did. It went to your brain.
What do you mean? Think about it. How did it get to my brain?
Why did it go to your brain?
How did it get there?
You saw it.
But I was never there by it. In other words, I saw it. A mile away, I saw it in its own place.
Okay.
So I saw it in its own abode, in its own truth, not how it touched me. This is, it came to me, I came to it, because I come in contact. I really touch it. I feel it with my own hands. This is something which I don't feel with my own nothing.
Okay.
I know it because it's there a mile away, because it's a reality, that's how I know it.
Okay, when you smell something, it can be like a mile away too.
But,
When you smell something, it can be a mile away too.
no, that you know is not true. Because the smell reaches you because there's a smell. It's like wind, okay? There is an element that emanates from that object. It's actually, it's a physical thing. It actually reaches you. It goes through the air and it reaches you. Just like smoke, right? Smoke reaches you. You smell smoke. It smells not because it's over there or because it comes to you. It comes to you. Okay, do we understand? Do we see it now, the difference? Baruch Hashem, this is very important. These are principal things. And this is the difference between seichel at a higher level and midas. Midas is how I am affected by something, how I feel about something. I like it, I don't like it. Seichel is nothing to do with me. Now it's my personal reaction to it, my personal effect. Seichel means I know the truth. Because it's true. Not because it affects me. And that element of seichel, this is the principle that distinguishes between a human being and lahavu, everything else. Because a human being relates to the truth. And we all understood when we asked the question, what would the world be without a human being? And they understand nothing. And you put a human being in it, and because of something. How is it? Because of this principle. Because a human being, he represents a truth, a reality. Everything else doesn't have reality. Everything else is just reactive. So big deal, there's nothing there. Okay. Yeah? You with me? Hmm?
When you see something, it's a bigger effect, no?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. It's a much bigger effect. To the extent that even the Yetzer Hara is not interested in something that you cannot see.
Is it interested in something that you can touch?
No, that's what I'm saying. The Yetzer Hara does not really, is not enticed by touch. If you see it, then it's enticed by touch. But if you don't see it, it's not very interesting. Because it's not real. Yetzer Hara also wants something, he's enticed by something that's real. Otherwise it's just imaginary.
Wait, so when you smell something, right? So these are like want you to smell a thing even though you can see it?
No, it's not, it's pleasant, just like taste, it's pleasant. But the real Indian, like oinek, we said, oinek from food, only comes if you see it. That's a completely higher, different kind of experience. You're absolutely right. Sight has a much greater effect on a person. Why? Because sight puts a person right in the middle of the reality of the world. A person who doesn't see, God forbid, does not have a real world. He lives in his own mind. Very painful type of thing. Okay. So now, I want to conclude this so that next time we can pick up from here. This was a very important discussion that we came to realize that there is something unique about the human being. And in the human being, the unique element is seichel, which is corresponding to sight, on the upper level of sight. And now we're coming with so the union for seichel we discussed before, how the nefesh elikis and the nefesh abamis communicate on the seichel level. And nefesh elikis is able to show the nefesh abamis how it's through seichel, through intelligence, how Gashmius actually demonstrates a godly union, a ruch niziki. That can only be recognized in seichel.
Yeah, there are two different visions of things now. They look at things.
That's right. They look at things very, very different. Very different. But because the Nefesh Abamis has seichel, the Nefesh Elikis can explain to the Nefesh Abamis, look, you see it, but think about what I'm showing you. You can explain to him and see, you can see that there is something more to it. It's not just Gashmi, there's something more to this phenomenon.
But it only understands Gashmi.
Huh?
But it only understands Gashmi.
On his own, yes. But this is the Yin has seichel. That seichel is able to understand even that which is above you. And that's how the Nefesh Elikis can influence the Nefesh Abamis.
You're explaining the difference between seeing and touching in order that we should understand the seichel and midas. Now that we understand it, so now therefore we can understand that Abraham has this special part that you have seen.
No, that's simply to understand the difference between seichel and midas, because we are going to go now to talk about midas.
Explaining this interaction between Nefesh Elikis and Nefesh Abamis, it happens by a person on a conscious level when he's contemplating, for instance, sits down to contemplate something physical or something.
Yes.
It doesn't happen as a conversation, obviously, because it's all one person, right? So,
Well, it is almost like a conversation. But of course, it's not a conversation of a give and take. But it is a conversation that takes place where he sees one thing, but then he says, but that's not all there is to see. He sees the physical, but it's not all there is to see. There is more. And this is where the conversation takes place. The Nefesh Elikis sees it from its perspective. The Rabbi sees it from its perspective. And he is in a dilemma. Which is it? And he comes to a conclusion that it's both. There is a physical, but that's how you see it from a low level. But in reality, the Nefesh Elikis, how do we see it from that level? Okay, so, the point is like this. The hour is over, but I hope you have your notes. You have your notes here, mental notes, meeting notes, something to review and to contemplate. Ultimately, the union of Seichel is a primary union in a human being in general, and by a Yid in particular. Emunah, Emunah's Halakus, Emunah in Hashem, the Alter Rebbe explains, is principally in the brain, in the mind, in the Chokhmah. It's called the Chokhmah for Nefesh Elokis. It's part of the Seichel. Without Seichel, you can't have Emunah.
Without Seichel, you can have Emunah.
I say Emunah is the upper. The Chassidus, he points out that everything is reflected also in Gashmis. Like the Yud is Yud Kei Vov Kei. The Yud is Chochmah. Kei is Bina. In the Yud itself, there is what's called Koisei Shel Yud. You learned about it. Koisei Shel Yud, that represents the Emunah. If you don't have Chochmah, which you don't have a Yud, so you don't have Koisei Shel Yud. God forbid. The Seichel emanates from the Koisei Shel Yud into the Yud, into the Chochmah, and then into the Bina.
But if Emunah precedes the Chokhmah, so why wouldn't you have? Why is it that the Emunah depends on the Chokhmah?
No, the Emunah does not depend on the Chokhmah. A human being, a Yid, was given Seichel. The Seichel contains various parts, various levels. The upper level of Seichel is the Koisei Shel Yud, which is the upper level of the Chokhmah, which is the Emunah. All right. To be continued in Mitzvah Shem.